Welcome back to Inside the Markets. We're going to talk some mining today. I've got Chris Taylor. He's the CEO of Great Bear Resources. Great Bear trades as GBR on the venture. Chris, I appreciate you spending some time with me today. So I have to ask here, about a year ago, a junior, 40, 50 cents, quite a ride in the last year and change. Red Lake, Ontario, you're tightly held. You got McEwen in there with you. Why don't you run through the whirlwind of the last year? And I saw a presentation you gave at the MIF, and you kind of walked through the chart. So why don't you run through, if you can, this last year or so for investors?
Thanks, Rob, and thanks for speaking with me today. So as you mentioned, just over a year ago now, we would have been just another penny stock, an explorer, but we had a good property and it was in a safe jurisdiction. We had a bit of cash and we were careful with raising money, keeping the share count down. And then we began to make a series of back to back to back to back, sorry to go on and on, but discoveries, high grade gold discoveries beside the highway that leads into Red Lake. So what you're looking at today is the culmination of really a couple of years of steady drilling, good science, and lots of discovery of gold that goes right to the near surface. So I think that sets us apart from most of our peers. It's a good track record of success, but the jurisdiction and the share count are also very helpful to being able to run something that is profitable for our shareholders.
Yeah, and there's the two main targets we're talking about here. You had of course, the Hinge zone, which kind of set everything going here, and lately it's the focus has been on the LP fault zone. Why don't you kind of break down Hinge first? And there's been some comparisons made to of course the big Red Lake mine here. So why don't you run through how you see the geology there in the comparison?
Well, there's two big packages of rocks on our property, the Dixie property in Red Lake. And one package is very much like the other rocks that are mined in the district. So the Red Lake Gold Mine, which is operated by Newmont Gold Corp. This was a famous discovery back about 25 years ago under Rob McEwen's stewardship, where they found very high-grade gold in veins that go down to great depths. And what we're looking at with our Hinge Zone discovery and the Dixie Limb Zone, which is right beside that, is very much the same thing, the same sort of vein-hosted high-grade gold over a very similar sort of spatial footprint to what they had, very similar widths, very similar grades. But the difference is that our Hinge Zone and the Dixie Limb Zone, they go right to surface on our project. And while high-grade gold does go to surface at the main Red Lake gold mine, what made the mine famous and what made it so heavily profitable for Gold Corp and now Newmont Gold Corp all these years later was the fact that they had very high-grade gold, and it extended from about a kilometer depth to about 2.5 kilometers depth. And above this high-grade zone discovery, there's really nothing at surface on that deposit, just right above that particular zone, which is what made the mine famous. So what we began finding over a year ago now that got Rob McEwen involved as a major investor was very similar types of discoveries in similar types of rock. And of course, there's now another rock type package on our project at Dixie, which is these felsic volcanic units, which are an entirely new source of high grade and bulk tonnage disseminated gold. And that's what we're drilling along this LP fault target that you mentioned.
So explain the plan here. You got what you needed out of Hinge now. Now the focus is there, or are we pausing the program, or how are you going to attack both here, or are you?
Well, what we did was we increased the number of drill rigs on the project over the course of this year. So we went from one drill rig at the beginning of the year to two in the middle, and then we added another one. And that's allowed us, when we found the LP fault, we needed to very rapidly determine how extensive gold mineralization was within it. And what we began finding was high-grade gold that goes up to surface and this bracket of the big, low-grade sort of bulk tonnage type mineralization like you'd see at other sort of typically they're open pit type targets. In our case, it's early days. We still have to see. But what we had to do in order to do that rapidly was pull rigs off of the Hinge Zone. When we love the Hinge Zone, it's a fantastic discovery. But what you'll see in the near future is there will be very likely at some point in the near future an increase in the number of drill rigs again. And then we'd very much like we'd like to get back to the Hinge and the Dixie Limb and continue to expand those. They are very exciting discoveries, and the high-grade gold has been very consistent. And that's really what you look for in a deposit if it's going to become a mine at some point in the future. So it's a dual approach. We have to continue expanding those targets, and we have to continue expanding the new discoveries along this LP fault as well.
Yeah, so you've had some famous comparisons here, Red Lake Mine, and then I've heard Hemlo. So you're telling me that you have both of those opportunities in front of you. How does that happen, Chris? How does that fall in your lap?
Oddly enough, I mean, from a scientific, I'll answer the science first because that's my background. I'm a scientist, and then I'll talk about how lucky we are after. But if you think about the science, we had very similar rocks to what makes most of the mines in the district already. And then we looked at government data, and that data showed us that we had a great big fault zone. It's nearly 20 kilometers long on our project from tip to tip. And we had these greenstone belt type rocks that host the gold, which are cut by that big fault. So the reason that we have so much gold is that there's major crustal structures, and these are the types of structures that produce big mines elsewhere in the world. So we figured out that we had those. We began to drill it, and effectively the rest, as they say, is history. How we got it in the first place, couple key things here. First one is that there's very little bedrock exposure on the property, so it's pretty much guesswork when you're walking around in the bush in that area. You're only a mile or 2 miles off a paved highway, so you're close to the highway, but you just don't see bedrock. So what that means is that nobody found any gold on our project until the 1980s for the first time. And when they began looking at the rocks, they thought that some of the rocks, like the ones we're having all these new discoveries in, they don't fit the normal Red Lake model. So people saw the rocks, they saw that they were wrong. You know, these are the wrong type of rocks to host a major deposit. We didn't care about that. We followed the gold, and by following the gold, we ended up making the discoveries that we have. So we had a project that's basically concealed under a thin blanket of 2 or 3 meters, sometimes 10 meters of gravel, so you don't see the bedrock, but literally the gold goes right to surface, other than that, right below your feet. And we had a misunderstanding in the area because people had a model that these rocks didn't fit into. But good thing for us, the gold didn't care. It went in where it was bound to go in, and we've been following it because we didn't care about the model either. We cared about following the gold.
Yeah. So on the share side of things, on the market side, I should say, obviously the stock shot up. What I'm trying to figure out today for investors is this little breather that you took off the top, is this a good entry point for you? So why don't you kind of lay out the reasons to still own the stock and what investors can look forward to in the coming months?
Yeah, this is, for us, it's a unique position for Great Bear to be in because I mean, I hate to say it, I'm not an egotistical guy, but we are a market leader in this space. So as an investor, you can make two kinds of bets, really. You can bet that you're going to get lucky when you buy a penny stock, and maybe in that sense you might triple or quadruple or whatever the case is, or you can follow a team that's been successful. And in our case, we've had repeated success. It's very early days with the exploration on our project. I think we said the other day that new LP target is 20 kilometers long. We've only drilled about 3 of those so far. So this is a bet that there's more gold on the project than what is well known. But I've had the same feedback the entire time in Great Bear. There was times when a couple of years ago we went from 15 cents to 60 cents, and everybody patted me on the back profusely and said, "Great job, Chris, you tripled or quadrupled, and it wasn't a good year. Good for you. Next time you do something, I'll buy some shares." And then we went from 60 cents to a couple of bucks, and it was the same thing. "Thanks, Chris, great job. You did a great job." And then we went from a couple bucks to $4 or $5, and then $4 or $5 to $9, and now we've had a little bit of a pullback. We're probably about $7.5, $8. You know, no stock in the world goes up in a straight line. I've never had the privilege of being invested in one of these because they don't exist. But Great Bear, it's definitely shown that every time we reach a new level, there's a little bit of consolidation. And then as long as we keep producing results with the drill bit, we attain a new level as the market begins to understand the scope, the raw scope, and the potential of the project that we're dealing with. So there's no way that anybody has a crystal ball and they know what the politicians are going to tweet next week and how that's going to affect the gold market or anything, or even what we're going to hit with the drill rig. But so far, so good. And the scope of the system that we're drilling off right now at Great Bear's project, this is very atypical. If you were to line up all the gold mines in Red Lake back to back to back, they'd be about 22 kilometers long, or the projects would be. The mines would be much smaller than that, but the projects, the land packages, would be about 22 kilometers long. That would have produced over 30 million ounces of gold. Now, you can never draw direct comparisons in this business. You never know what's around the corner. You can have indications, but there's never certainty. But our project, this LP target that we're drilling, it's about the same length as the entire producing part of the Red Lake district put together. So I think the potential in our point of view is to show that it really doesn't have very many parallels, certainly in Canada or other locations, to that raw potential size. And really that's one of the key factors investors should think about is, has Great Bear, even though they're good at finding gold, have they managed somehow miraculously to find all the gold on that project already? Or could there be, because we've only drilled about 18% of this target, could there be more gold to find? And that's probably one of your first investment decision-making criteria.
Yeah, and we'll certainly look forward to getting that news flow when it comes in from you. But you got a good gold market here, so I would think that it looks like all systems are go. You can only control what you can control, but the work continues. And so best of luck. So that's Chris Taylor, President and CEO, Great Bear Resources, GBR in the venture. Chris, appreciate stopping by, and again, look forward to tracking the success in the future.
Thanks, Rob. I look forward to talking to you again. Thanks very much.